Hi everyone, welcome to Read 516. This is week 2. Before we get started, we're going to go over some couple of reminders. Please make sure to read your weekly checklist. This will be posted on your weekly block. So if I were you, I would print those out and check those off to make sure you get all the assignments and readings in. As mentioned before, late assignments will be reduced by 1 letter grade and must be submitted no later than 1 week past the due date. Discussion posts and small group assignments will not be accepted late. Last day to drop the course without a W is September 9th. And the one I want you to really look at the most is the fieldwork requirement, which is due September 4th. And this is something that you really need to get in because you cannot work with your student without getting that in. Okay, so one of your first assignments on titanium this week is to update your titanium profile. So please let me know your current occupation and position, your intent for taking this course, and or what's your reasoning for selecting reading as your focus. Let me know some of your interests outside of teaching. Upload a nice picture of you and your phone number. This is optional but can be beneficial if you want to get in contact with a classmate. Okay, so for week 2 you do have some heavy reading this week and I apologize. You have your IRA, the NCTE, standards for the assessment of reading and writing. You have your core book. This is kind of just an intro to assessing reading and kind of gives you just different types of assessments that are in the book. Chapter 4 in Lipson and Wixon. Chapter 9 and Chapter 8. So these are kind of just small chunks of reading, but kind of adds up to a lot. And the RTI article, which you will find on week 2 block. So you can just click on the link and print it out. All right, so aside from the readings, you also have some questions for the week, and there's going to be 2 forum discussions. So make sure you get those in by next Wednesday by midnight. So our first topic is going to be basically the overall arching question and theme for our course. What is assessment? What is the value or purpose behind assessment? Why do we do it? And what should we consider when giving assessments? So our second topic is, what is the role of formal assessment in the assessment process? So please make sure that you do topic 2 after you do topic 1. What is the benefit of formal assessment? What is a limitation or challenge of formal assessment? So as you're doing your readings, these are kind of questions that you should be thinking about, and so I would probably take notes and just have these questions in your head as you're reading. Oh, and apparently we have one more. How do the IRA, the NCTE standards for assessment apply to formal assessment? So these forum discussions are considered our participation activities, and a couple of guidelines. Answer all parts of the prompt, quality not quantity, use course readings and materials to support your answer, and cite them with APA, integrate the thoughts of colleagues unless you're the first to post, kind of incentive to kind of get that first one in, proofread at least 2 times for spelling, grammar, and mechanics. Okay, so this is a graduate course, so please just check over your work and make sure that we can understand it. Okay, as mentioned earlier, fieldwork requirement. This is required to work with your students, so can you please post online, email, or you can just give it to me on September 4th. Okay, so there is a teaching certification or live scan that you give to me or a permission form. And if you are submitting this via Titanium, there is a submission folder under week 2. Okay, so kind of get to the meat of today's lecture. We are going to discuss assessment terms, formal assessment, and response to intervention. Our session objectives, number 1 is to evaluate assessments against the IRA standards, explain characteristics of formal assessments, discuss the response to intervention framework, and the use of assessments to support screening. So by the end of this lecture, you should kind of understand all these objectives. If you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there, but those who teach without theories may follow the road that leads nowhere. In reality, all teachers have some sort of theory. And this is from Lipson and Wixon, page 3. And this kind of reiterates the fact that all teachers have some sort of belief system or theory about reading and writing. And this can definitely influence what you do in the classroom. So it's always important to kind of consider what your theory is of reading and writing, and always research other theories to hopefully have a balance in your classroom. And another statement from IRA standards, our assessment choices make very powerful controlling statements. So this can kind of go towards our students, parents, and families. Really think about your assessment choices. If you are emphasizing only one area of reading, such as fluency, then that can indicate strong implications about what you believe in. So just things to consider as we move forward. Okay, so once again, our guiding question. So what is assessment? I'm going to give you a moment to really think about that. Think about your current practices. Think about assessments that you have given or assessments that you have heard of. So what is assessment? Go ahead and take a moment to jot those ideas down. And you can definitely use that when you answer your forum discussion. Okay, just kind of wanted to get you started with something that was a little bit thought-provoking. Our IRA standards. So these are kind of an interesting thing. When I first read them, they really opened up my horizons about assessment. I feel like there's always something to learn. And so as I'm reading these, it just really makes sense, especially now with the Common Core coming and the SBAC. There's just so many things to consider when you are assessing a student. So the first one of their first standard is interests of the student are paramount. Assessment must serve, not harm, each student. So think about the implications of when you give an assessment. Think about the atmosphere and the environment. Also consider that when we start working with our student, you definitely do not want to harm your student. Obviously, this would be in terms of emotional. You don't want to make the assessments grueling. You kind of have to read your student. Don't give him or her a test after test, because that can be definitely grueling and you might not get the same results. Okay, our second one, the teacher is the most important agent. Now, I think this, the word agent was used intentionally. You play a critical role in the students' lives. So, you really have to think about what assessments you're giving and their implications. Purpose is to improve teaching and learning. So again, thinking about what decisions are you making with assessment, what are their implications? And I feel like this is kind of self-explanatory. Allows for critical inquiry into curriculum and instruction. So It is giving you evidence to support or disprove your teaching, or is it having a positive impact? So you're basically evaluating whether the assessment really is a true reflection of the curriculum and instruction. Must reflect complex nature of reading and writing. Okay, so as we know that reading and writing is very complex, and sometimes assessments tend to assess isolated skills. So we need to be careful when we are making a generalization about a student's ability. And we also must consider that there's different type of literacies, especially in the 21st century. So we don't want to make a guess on how a student is performing in a specific area. We need to look at the whole child and how they perform in different areas of literacy. Okay, continuing on with the standards, we have number 6, must be fair and equitable. Okay, so we need to avoid biases. Also, it needs to be fair. It needs to relate to the curriculum, your instruction, what you've been teaching. If you're assessing something that you didn't teach, it's not fair to the student. Also, it needs to be free of biases based on ethnic groups and gender, religion, and disabilities. Multiple perspectives and sources of data. So when you are assessing a child, you're not going to just want to pull from one source of assessment. You're going to want to gather data to kind of see the child as a whole in different areas of reading. We don't want to make a generalization based on one single measure. We need multiple measures to make a valid decision. Based in the local school community. The local school community is a more appropriate place to do the assessment rather than larger units such as the school district, the county, the state. And this is because this is where we build the relationships with the community, with the parents and families. And so there's more of a commitment. So this is where you would want to do the assessments. Number 10, all stakeholders have a voice. And again, this is kind of goes back with number 9 too. It's that whole relationship and community. If the family invests and the public invests, then I feel like there's more of a ownership of the learning, and you definitely will see more progress. Families must be involved. Okay, again, we want our parents involved in the assessment process. We don't want to do assessments without telling them the results and communicating strengths and the needs of their children. All right, so that does it with the IRA standards, and we're going to move on to formal assessment. Okay, so this is kind of an area of focus in our education system since they're mostly considered high stakes. What do you know about formal assessments? That was one of our guiding questions, kind of. Can you think of any examples? So go ahead and think of some examples of formal assessments. And I put the picture of the guy in the hat because he's very formal. Okay, so the CSTs, that's kind of a big one, are SELT testing. And as we're moving forward to the Common Core, the SBAC or PARCC. So these are formal assessments. And sometimes I feel that they're overly emphasized because they're so high stakes. And I feel that because sometimes the community puts a focus on it, it's a tendency that we only look at those assessments, which is not really a reliable source because we need to be looking at multiple measures of assessment. Okay, so what is it? Basically, it's typically published tests that provide standardized methods of administration, scoring, and interpretation. So usually these are very scripted. They have a protocol on how to administer them and score them.